Hey everybody, this is Spook, and this is the Spook video about Silo, the TV show on Apple, memory holes, and how dystopian future manipulates the present. So, yeah, if you haven't seen the show, I'm going to be talking about events in the show. So, I'm going to try to be as spoiler free as possible, but some information may drop, so feel free to go check out the show. TLDR is it is a very it's a very what I like the I definitely watched the whole thing. I watched season 1, watched season 2, watched it all the way through. So I'll give it definitely Silver Spook thumbs up for sure. All the Apple shows that I've seen so far have been at least high quality in production and interesting to watch. They're complete shows. Apparently, Silo season 3 has wrapped filming of. Silo team has wrapped filming of Silo season 4 already as of March. So we're gonna get the whole show, as opposed to some shows where you got season 1 and then it's not quite complete, hinting at season 2, and then there's no season 2. Or you got season 1 and maybe season 2, and the show just kind of ends with a thud, with all kind of cliffhangers, and it's and those kind of things. So the Apple shows are all kind of I'm not sure why, still trying to figure that out. Pluribus, Severance, Silo. Actually, I just randomly started watching. I just randomly picked the show on Apple. I started watching it, and that's how I found it. Again, they are not the number one ultimate undefeated champion in marketing. I never know. Sometimes I don't even realize there's Apple shows happening. It's just completely go under the radar for me. And also Holly. So it's anyway. That's a whole topic that we could talk about for a long time, why that is. But anyways, but onto the kind of main topic. I'm not going to recap the whole. I'll review some of it. The short answer is, writing really, the writing is, how could we describe it? You definitely always kept guessing. It's always kept interesting. It's all the characters are well acted, well scripted. If you don't like dystopian fiction, then it's gonna be maybe not up your alley, because it's a world where people are trapped underground and they don't know why they're there, and the world is destroyed outside, and there's only 10,000 people they know of alive, and it's everyone's confused, paranoid, anxious, scared all the time. So betrayal and conflict, it's if you don't like those kinds of emotions and feelings in your show, then that's the kind of show it is. But but it is definitely you always want to, for me, I always want to find out what's going to happen next. So what is the secret? I think one of the taglines was "the truth will surface." So it's definitely it's a mystery show. Mystery and detective fiction is one of the most popular because it keeps you constantly guessing. In this case, the mystery is what is going on. That's the mystery in a lot of sci-fi that drives viewership / readership forward. So, and Silo does a good job of that, I think. Some people have commented that they didn't like the amnesia subthread in the season 3. It is a little bit disorienting, just partially because the last season came out 2 years ago, so it was a little. I think it would have been nice. It's kind of funny because in a show about memory forgetting and little yellow duck-headed Pez dispensers being the last token, kind of magical talismans to possibly help save the world, right? These little random objects of minutia from times times past. Right? They call them relics in this world. In the world of Silo, objects, because in the Silo there's like you kind of get the sense that like you don't know what has happened, but objects that that's part of the mystery that keeps you watching. Objects that came from the before time, right? Like pictures of bears, absolutely illegal. They don't know what those things are. Uh, um, Constellation maps. They never seen the sky. Illegal. Pez dispensers from, our time or some other time, illegal. Rubber ducks, banned. Old hard drives, books, children's books, Encyclopedia Britannica, People magazine. They don't know what those things are, but any object that shows up, that's actually a major part of the whole show. And so those objects being hidden and being confiscated and kept away from the citizens of the silo. I'm not sure. I forget the exact name they use. So it's like how they describe themselves. That's interesting as well. I mean, as a science fiction and dystopian fiction and cyberpunk and speculative fiction writer, I'm always interested in that kind of thing. I'm currently working on Neophyte 3, just a little sidebar. So that's something I've been thinking about a lot. How to write these things, because a lot of like a lot of the Neophyte world is like the way that things are described, right? Really, really matters, right? Like CEO Kings and the coronation day / inauguration day, right? Putting those things together in that way causes like certain clouds of association and orientation, reorientation, disorientation, confusion, or cause people to like shift their worldview and or their thinking, hopefully in a better way. But at least giving people a mind flack, a mind, it's messing with people's heads, or it causes people to see things from a different vantage point. And so Silo is also doing that by taking all these everyday objects, right? Because if you were to see a Pez dispenser, if you see a magazine, if you see a children's rubber ducky from a bathtub, you're like, you don't think about those, right? You're just like, but then in the context where there is nothing from the before time. There is just, your, silo printed clothes and your silo printed, like, it's like the Fallout vault. Like you have your, silo issue fork. You get your silo issue light bulbs. They have a set amount of them. They're generic. They have no brand. There's no history to them. Right. They have their own internal stories, and they have these ceremonies that they have. They have like the way they do funerals, and that Steve Zahn, that part. It's actually a lot of the show. The way they do funerals, they have this ritual where trees that are grown in this underground orchard, they give apples. When someone dies, they dig a hole under this one region in the silo. Well, they have artificial light, like sun-like light projected. Like they're like specifically for like underground agriculture, right? So they have these light bulbs that shine light onto the trees. That's how they have some trees, but they're only very specific trees in very specific areas. They have just the right amount of them so they can survive and continue on, right? And so the silo, when someone dies, they lower a coffin into this section of the dirt, and then they throw everyone takes a bite of an apple, right, grown from one of these trees, and then they all throw part of their apple into the hole where the coffin goes, right? And so it's like, hopefully, like the life of this person that has passed, right, and like some of that fruit and that seed will nurture a future life, right? And so it's like, and Steve Zahn has a line where it's like, or somebody has a line. It's like somebody's talking to Steve Zahn, whose mother has recently died, or he's discovered how his mother has died, and he's sad and he's heartbroken about that. And one of the other characters says, maybe we should bury her, because he's trying to convince him to like kind of come out of that, and they need to get to something where his mother's body was found. And it's like, maybe we have this ritual where, I think it would be kind of nice where we lower people into the ground, and we take a bite of an apple, throw apples on top, and even though your mother didn't escape the silo, someone, if we do this, someday someone will eat an apple that was nurtured from a tree that took nutrients from your mother's body, and so part of your mother, when somebody finally eats that apple and leaves the silo, your mother will finally leave the silo because she was part of this process, right, of continuation and moving forward. And so and so that itself is part of that's part of the point of the silo, which is the stories that people tell themselves, what keeps human societies and people individually and collectively moving forward, or not wanting to move forward, right? Because it's kind of like in that moment he's kind of stuck and he doesn't really want to move. And he wants to he refuses to go along with the plan. They kind of need to go. They need to execute this plan to move forward, but because he can't bear to even look or be. He doesn't want anything to happen to his mother's body. He's just kind of frozen, right? So I think there's a point that's being made there, right? Which is that the ritual of funeral, the rites of passage, right? The funeral ritual as part of other rituals in the world, right? Is part of the civilizational process and the stories about who we are, right? Whereas your mother didn't just die for no reason. Your mother died as part of our project. We don't know what it is even. It's really clouded, but we do have a goal, which is to get out of here at least. And that's a story that group is actually a rebelling group though. But it's and so they've constructed a new. That character is constructing his story to tell, right? And somebody says what he's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to stop this guy. I don't know how to fight her. I'm just a bullshit artist. And then somebody else tells this the character that's right narrating, right, just you're a bullshit artist, so bullshit. And so he basically makes that. He doesn't make up, but he makes up parts of it, right? He doesn't make up. They do have that ritual, but he makes up the meaning, right? As a priest does, as an obituary giver does, right? As a pastor does, as a teacher does, as parents do, as I'm not saying all parents are bullshitting and all priests are bullshit, but people have to have a story that they're telling the future, and the story that the parents or the government or the school or right the previous generation told you is not always exactly the same as the one that the current generation tells the next, right? Or the CNN or the Empire, the CIA, the State Department cutouts, the history books, the textbooks written by imperial capitalist colonial structures or socialist organizations or countries, or the narrative of marginalized people in a country like Black people. They have a different story that carries them forward, but there is a story, right, that moves people forward through time. I mean, it's something that the human mind kind of needs, and I think that's part of the what the silo is examining. So coming back to that moment where it's so after the bullshit artist, right, pieces together a story that sounds like a good story. Steve Zahn is somebody who he watched every single person in his silo die. Everyone he ever knew died in this terrible event. It's a mass culling. It's called the safeguard procedure, where they just kill everyone with poison gas, and you don't even know exactly why. Everyone just dies. It's kind of like everyone being poisoned by psychosporiasis and the food all becoming unsafe, and there's hurricanes everywhere. We just saw one recently. There's events, but then the responses to that and the fixing of infrastructure not going very well. I already talked about that on some other events. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but like the infrastructure falling apart, the organizations falling apart, everyone losing their jobs, especially game jobs, figuring out what to do, empire dissolving, can't get oil out of Strait of Hormuz. Like what's happening? What is happening? I don't know why these bad things are happening. You know, what is the story that keep what? Who is America? Who is the West? What are we doing? What is my future as a Gen Z or Gen Alpha, soon to be college grad? Or I don't even know if I want to go to college. What is the college story that's going to keep me moving into that? And I'm just kind of spitballing from there. But like, so the silo, everyone dies. And so the character, Steve Zahn is just like famous actor from the 90s. Go look him up. He is the sole survivor of his, like, now again completely dead silo, right? And so he never really had a family. He's kind of like, he's like 50 years old, but his mind is like a child. There's a character, Victor, in the horror show From, that's very similar. It's like a grown man, right? A grown, like, middle or even older middle-aged man, but he's acting like a little boy because he was alone for 40 years of his life since he was like a grade schooler, right? And so he hasn't had any rituals, right? He hasn't had any culture except what he's made up in his head. He's a very weird guy. He like plays his music and he doesn't know what the songs are. He's playing like Beatles, and he has access to the before times because he's in the controller's room, right? It's like a little bit Brave New Worldian, speaking of dystopian fiction in that sense, or Orwellian and Brave New Worldian in the same sense. Double speak and truth controlling memory hole comes from 1984. So, but he's stuck in that room. He doesn't have any culture, but he only has what he has made up in his own head as he's been alone for most of his life, right? And so this guy from another silo who has other people, and they have their own rituals, however weird and strange and kind of made up, and they don't really understand them and really where they come from. But like we do have this story that we tell ourselves, and like he's working new things into the story so that it works in this moment, right? And so, but anyway, so the Steve, I'm just using, I can't remember everybody's names right now. So the Steve Zahn character does in that moment, he feels like, yeah, that idea does sound good. My mom will not have died for nothing. My mom will have died for part of this purpose. And even though she didn't get out, you know, because his mom did fight to save their silo, right? She did at least delay the demise of the people there. So, and one day if they plant the tree, then one day it is true that possibly somebody some part of her will live on in the next generation, right? Who's phosphate and nitrogen, right? Who's the atoms and the molecules will moving through like in a thermodynamics and a historical and dialectical material way, dialectical post-apocalyptic materialist way, where the atoms of the tree turns into the atoms of the next, right, vault resident, and then the vault resident eats the apples from the tree, and then when they die, they become part of the soil, and it's been going on for centuries, right? Because they have all they have in the silo is all that they have. They have nothing out from the outside. So it's like a self-contained, hermetically sealed system. Well, not quite completely sealed, but we'll get to that later. So anyway, so that story works to moving forward, and that's a lot of what the silo is about, and that's why I think like there is an amnesia subplot that goes on for several episodes. I think partially that's kind of make a point that like it's I think it's partially meant to be kind of bewildering because the main character Juliet Nichols that's in this thumbnail, the actress is also in Dune, and her character is she has had her memory wiped, right? She has forcefully been given amnesia, and so she is like disoriented. She doesn't know who people she's talking to, which is I mean, it is kind of part of the story, and it is part of, like, it is kind of important to the narrative. Even though it is a bit disorienting, it would almost be nice if if the viewers could get some previously on Silo, because they don't really have any previously on. So it's a lot of cold turkey thrown into the road. You are a little bit like not all shows have previously on, right? Like, they gives you a little recap, right, of what happened that's relevant to the current episode. So if you're used to that, it's gonna be a little bit like, you gotta watch some of the last season. You gotta go and do that on your own. You gotta do your own homework. So you gotta use your brain, So that's maybe everyone's brain just got too lazy, because the memory holes, the neurological destruction, and mental degeneration caused by usage of Gen AI prosthetic memory, and also COVID reinfections times 7+ has rotted people's capacity to remember things that have happened more than 10 seconds or 2 days ago. So I think that actually there is definitely like problems with, like, not just book literacy but also media literacy, TV show and movie literacy. There's definitely things happening there. I mean, part of it is, obviously, the overconsumption of short form content, like any substance, is can be a deleterious drug addiction. But also, obviously, just lack of people like reading books, or like staying focused on and remembering information, right, over a long period of time. AI also shows up. Gen AI, Gen AI like systems show up for sure as part of the dystopia in this show as well. The memory, and the memory lost in this dystopian, underground future, is mirrored by, and in season 3, the nice thing is you actually get to learn through a simultaneous thread of the show that happens in our present time or near our present time. It's above ground. And then there is a congressperson who is trying to get infrastructure built in America and having difficulty doing it. And then there is a journalist who is trying to speak truth to power, works at the New York Times, gets fired for angering, wealthy, powerful people complicit in war crimes, as you do. And so that part, some people don't like that thread. There's some things I don't like about that thread, which is, some of the things I don't like. I've done many videos and videos on the problems with the Marvel movies. It's just Hollywood made stuff, especially when it deals with the politics of our present world and geopolitics of the world in particular. And it gets kind of, more propaganda-y, especially when it comes to U.S. foreign policy and Western, kind of just airbrushing and demonizing of imperial capitalist enemies. So there's comments on Iran. That's like the character in the present. Let me see if I can grab a picture of him real fast. It has Frank, Tom Hanks' son. Tom Hanks' son plays an Elon Musk trillionaire. That Elon Musk like trillionaire a-hole, which is that character is. They make him at least hateable, so I'll give him that. It's not like, oh yes, and United States and trillionaires and global imperialism and making war on Iran is awesome and cool and good. I mean, it's not quite that propaganda. Like, Avengers, where like billionaire philanthropists, like literal Elon Musk billionaire philanthropist, arms dealer, playboy, and Captain U.S. Empire are super good, awesome, and saving the world and human rights, freedom, democracy, blah blah blah. But there is this ironic Ashley Zuckerman, that's the actor that plays the congressman, and Jessica Henwick, they're like the journalists and the congressman, and she's like reporting on Congress people in DC. He's he's trying to get his legislation passed. He's it's not doing as well as he would like it to. His sister is in the U.S. Navy. They spend a lot of time in DC, and there's many military personnel. So I'm like, how are we gonna like I was like let's not humanize war criminals too much. Like they get enough of that with the New York Times, Guardian, BBC, WAPO, Atlantic, and Axios, like trying to save their burning empire from Iranian missiles. We don't need any more airbrushing. But I mean, I feel like by the end of season 3, I feel like it's not. I would not. They do say things like there's things that are just kind of dropped, like Iran unleashes dirty bomb in the United States. Iran makes all these attacks, and it's kind of a lot of these things are mentioned, like Iran did this, Iran blew up this, Iran terrorized that, Iran crushed this and attacked that, and it's like the way that it just this kind of like this, it's like I wouldn't maybe not have done. Obviously, you know what I would do, because you could play Neophyte too. You know what I would do, but it could have been worse. I could have just been like straight up like and then we blew up Iran, and we kept neo colonies in Africa, Asia, Latin America, sucked all the resources into billionaire capitalists from around the world into Wall Street, and everything was good, and then the world had democracy, and we just. So it's not quite that bad, but there's some like comments on certain non-pro capitalist imperialist countries that are there's some comments that's like maybe could have just left that out. But anyway, they gotta have something. I don't know. Long story short, the congressman is sister. The congressman's sister is in the U.S. Navy. And she gets she's flying a mission. That's one thing. She's flying a mission to do an airstrike on Iran. So it's kind of like don't really need to sympathize with empires that are blowing up, doing wars of aggression that's causing collapse of the global economy, and the country that's supporting Palestinians and has been supporting Cuba, Palestine, and suffering people around the world. Iran being neutral / demonized or equated with the United States or worse. It's kind of like we don't really need that right now, especially right now. I mean, I don't know, right? It's kind of like so anyway, but I'll stop complaining about that, because it's not I've seen way worse in other shows, definitely in Falcon and Winter Soldier. It's really bad there, and definitely in almost all Western shows that have any mention of Russia, China, Iran. It's usually garbage, absolute garbage, especially coming out of Hollywood. Anything with a budget over like $500,000. So his sister is in the Navy. She is flying jets. She's flying U.S. military jets over Iran to do a military operation. Suddenly, with an unknown reason, or there's a weird black substance that starts like chewing away at her plane while she's in the air. That's what it looks like anyway. And then suddenly her plane malfunctions. Her jet fighter, her U.S. military jet fighter malfunctions, and she crashes somewhere. It's not unclear how and where exactly she crashes. Right, and it's like Iran has attacked the U.S. military with some unknown super weapon. Right, and so that's some. I think that's a little bit like that stuff is some, because the U.S. military is involved. When the U.S. military is involved, they have final say over the script. Right. In the United States, D.C. is involved, so the U.S. federal government, they film like I'm pretty sure they're filming inside Washington D.C. All right, so DC and the U.S. military have at least some hand in it. This there's a we have many streams on that, and many sources. You can go and look this up. But so they can't say the real truth, which is U.S.'s empire is doing war crimes and needs to stop, and needs to stop committing genocide all over the freaking planet, and backing imperialism and colonialism that's destroying the planet with climate change, needless extraction for trillionaires, and getting their own soldiers killed for nothing, and making them jump ship on the USS Abraham Lincoln. Anyway, to do war crimes and blow up innocent people and not actually hit military targets and just blow up volleyball teams, school children, in attempts to, basically just make life so unlivable that people just give up, or starving Cubans to death, or keep having babies and disabled people die because they can't get their electricity is not on because the U.S. is cutting them off. Anyway, as they do around the whole planet. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to go too hard on that. I'm going to have to. It's hard. It's a little bit hard because it is like jets flying into Iran, U.S. military jets flying into Iran. Iran is not a central character in this movie, really. It just happens to be a place because the U.S. military and the Pentagon and billionaires and trillionaires, oligarchs, are involved in the creation of the silo. So, it's like Fallout, right? Who the U.S. president, gigantic corporations, military, and building under the world underground bunkers, right? Actually, Silo, I kind of said Silo is a little bit like Fallout. Silo is kind of like Fallout minus all the like zany, like wacky, biting satire. Like it's like Caesar, but no, it's the Kaiser with the C, like the it doesn't have all like the over the top kind of like some of the best parts of Fallout are like the sense of humor, right? Like oh yeah, so we're all doing incest here down in this underground. It's like underground vault, and here's our cornfields, and yeah, here's our plan to blow the whole planet up. Here the 76 ball. I mean, it has like Fallout has relics, but it's more it's not as it has a different sensibility, right? It's more serious. I'm not saying that Fallout doesn't have serious topics and ideas and themes and it's not Fallout isn't serious, but like Silo is like only serious, no comedy. Like nobody is really funny. That's one thing. If you want to laugh, Silo is not really that funny. I mean, there's like some little generic banter, but it's not. You're not gonna laugh the way you do in a Fallout. The Lucy with the cousin, the incest one, that one was I was literally laughing in that one. And the it's kind of like the mockery at the expense of like kind of Western ridiculousness and American Gothic kind of nonsense. And like it's not as lampooning. It's more like we are in this, and this is it's a bit more serious. Which I'm not saying it's bad for it. It's just it's a different aesthetic. It's a different tone. It's a different vibe. Anyway, so let me look at the chat real quick. Hey, how's it going, Noah? Right, thank you for stopping by. Okay, anyways, so where was I? I kind of got lost in that. Yeah, so the Navy is flying these missions into Iran. They're attacked by some kind of super weapon. You don't know what it is. The sister crashes. The main character in the present, the congressman's sister, wakes up and she doesn't remember who she is, or she doesn't remember much of anything. Right? She doesn't remember her brother, but that connects to the future, where in the future, in this underground apocalypse vault, the main character, right, Juliet Nichols, who was an engineer, and then she becomes a very popular figure, and then she's the only person that's left the silo. But when she comes back, her memory is wiped, and you're like, what has happened to her, right? And no, this is not the first time that memory has been wiped, because in previous seasons you discover that there is technology that the power the officials in the silo, certain officials, can erase people's memories. They have the ability to do that. With certain kind of substance injections, or putting things into people's food or water, they can destroy people's memories. And sometimes restore them as well. And restore them as they need it. Like they can restore certain parts of memories even. So in the present, that the U.S. military mission that goes wrong in Iran, and it results in this fighter pilot losing her memory, and so then the U.S. congressman asks, like, what happened? How could this have happened? What has happened to my sister? She doesn't remember me. She doesn't remember anything about me. And there's a doctor that is like working on some new technology that can you don't really, over time you learn that he's working on a technology to remove memories and restore memories. That is ultimately, you kind of get, okay, this is going to be a part of whatever the silo is, right? Because that's the technology they have in the future. It's a thing called vitamin D+, where if they put that in the water, everyone forgets everything, right? If they put vitamin D+ infusions into their water supply, so when you turn your tap on, when you go to drink water, when you go to drink your lemonade mix or whatever they're drinking, every single person in the silo will forget everything that they ever knew, and everyone they ever knew. So parents will forget children, husband forgets wife, and the people that the one interesting part is Common. I think he's a hip hop artist, Common, and his wife. They are some of the characters that know about this memory drug, this memory erasing amnesia drug, and then they're trying to create memories and trying to create as many memories as they can with their kid. Common is trying to create memories with his kid because he's thinking about what's going to happen, or maybe there's some way, maybe if he has some kind of objects, because he's heard that, right? Having certain intimate objects with the sights, the smell, like the scent of the Pez, even the scent of the Pez dispenser, the feel of, your loved one's watch, the scent of your partner's coat, can maybe be able to restore some of that person back. But if you don't have the objects, right, then the memory is gone forever, right? So then you see like why the objects are banned, right? Because if people get in contact with these little trinkets, the Pez dispenser, it's in every single season, it's constantly showing up, right? When the Pez, like pivotal things happen when this ancient 200-year-old Pez dispenser appears with this duck head, right? And so Common is trying to make memories. He's trying to associate things. He's trying to have his son associate him and his mom with like a particular coat or pick a particular toy, hoping that maybe if trillionaire forbid, everyone's memory gets erased, because trillionaire is the god that created this place. He's the which kind of tells you, okay, well, this place is not the best place to be in, right? Good chance this place is not the best place to be in. So then, if his son forgets him, if somehow his son discovers this little toy, like this little toy truck or this little watch, if his son discovers this watch, maybe his son will remember him, right? That's like part of the story and the drama that plays out. So and then the husband and wife don't trust each other. Each one is doing a different thing behind each other's back. There is like some kind of this horrible machine. You're not sure if it's a machine, but it sounds like ChatGPT or Claude that's talking to the controller of the silo, the one like the head of what's called IT. That's basically the person in charge of the silo. They're like the Mustafa Mond in a dystopian fiction sense. So everyone else in Brave New World is brainwashed, alpha, beta, gamma, designed and pumped out, genetically predetermined and spawned with exact specified amounts of fecal alcohol poisoning, exact amounts of alcohol syndrome or Down syndrome or a damage, and the exact right amount of quote unquote conditioning, not really schooling, or the exact right of quote unquote schooling that's actually conditioning, right, in the Brave New World. So everyone gets, there's engineering, there's supply, right? They keep track of the various toiletries and the light bulbs and all the kind of. Then there's the mines, which is like a punishment in the depths, and then there's farming and security, right? Each level it's very like Brave New Worldy. It's very Western dystopian fiction in that sense, and each and you in the first season you learn that each person is like there's a lottery because they have to always have exactly 10,000 people. So when someone dies, one couple is allowed, right? They are registered and they are given permission to reproduce, right? So each time someone dies, exactly one couple is able to reproduce because of they have to keep the exact number of people stable, because there's only enough resources to perpetuate that exact number, 10,000 people, going forward. Which this terrifying, horrible AI is communicating to head of IT, right? So it's kind of like the head of IT is like the Mustafa Mond. They have access to books. They have access to some other of the before times. They have access to the records of Bob Dylan and the Rolling Stones. They have access to encyclopedias. They have access to pictures of animals and plants and the Amazon rainforest and the Himalayas and oceans and waves. They have access to all these things from the past, right? Only one person. And everyone else is in the dark. So there's also the tension between the head of the controller, the head of IT, right, and everyone else. And the head of IT has to answer to this like horrific AI that asks people to like kill their own loved ones. It asks people to like kill their entire, like eviscerate the memories of everyone they know and love. It asks people, and it doesn't really tell you why. Actually, one of the most unbelievable things is that anyone would like go along with that whole process. But it's like, if you don't do what the AI says, if you don't follow the rules that the AI sets out, or this machine that seems to be some kind of computer intelligence. It might not even be a computer intelligence though. It could just be a normal, empty, soulless void where a human should be like an oligarch. It could just be the trillionaire's great grandson, with corpo speak LLM output filtration. Who the hell knows? It's not sure, but it's kind of like if you don't do what it says, it's like if these parameters are not met, like if anyone leaves the silo, or if too many people leave the silo, if you damage certain parts of the silo, if the population like takes certain actions, then the system will kill everyone. Right? So it's like, so if you're the head of IT, you have to always, you're like lying to all your people all the time. It is a terrible burden. Like Tim Robbins plays like the first controller, and it's like, it is a terrible burden. Nobody should have it. Nobody can do that job, really. Right? You have to lie to your own spouse. You have to lie to your children. You have to lie to everyone, and you have to constantly be making decisions that's going to get people killed, and you don't even really know why. And then it's every IT. It's like kind of like every person in IT either would revolt, or it's kind of like you don't. I guess it's kind of like you don't really have a choice. But the machine is selecting certain kinds of people too. So the machine is selecting certain kinds of individuals. I don't know, sociopathic or just like it says individuals that are very strong, right, to be that position. So it's what exactly strong means through this machine is a question mark. But anyway, yeah. So that person has to interface on behalf of everyone else with this machine. It is and like you don't really know you still don't really know what the goal of it the whole project is, right? But like it is not having everyone stay in the silo, having everyone stay in the silo, having everyone reproduce, make children, right, and stick to the plan, which is just be in the silo, live in the silo, right? Be born, go to work, eat food, drink water, plant apple trees, right? Die. Have your descendants and your relatives in the silo drop apples on you. Make new apple trees from your body, and then just turn humans into apple trees into humans, right? Humans back into apple trees indefinitely. That's basically the project. I mean, so if you think of it that way, the silo story, the silo lacks, right? The silo like lacks in its own internal narrative, which is why people keep trying to break out of it, right? But of course, I mean, maybe it'll come down and be like, well, the reason why people, I can kind of see like where it's probably going, which is like, if the goal is to, it's like if it is like so unlivable outside, right? Then it's like, well, you have to keep everyone underground. But it doesn't make any sense because, well, if it's unlivable outside, then just say, well, then everyone. That's one rule is you can't go outside, or there's a very strange rule. Is if you leave the silo, you can never come back, right? Well, it's like if everything is if it's, I mean, if you can compare it to Fallout world, right? If the world outside is like Fallout, right? Well, then if people go out, because in Fallout, people can go out, and then it's like, wow, it's radioactive wasteland out here. There's giant freaking scorpions that are the size of monster trucks, and it can, that can, sting you in the head and make your head explode. There's like horrible teams of, armored, Gatling gun wielded, brutes that are just like stomping around, shooting at people. There's cannibals. I mean, it's not nice up there. It's, or some people, are okay with the Fallout surface. But like, if you go out and leave the vault, it's discouraged, but it's not like you cannot go out and learn what's out there, right? It's just like they are told a story in the vault. One day we're gonna come out and we're gonna make America great again, and we're gonna plant corn, and we're gonna like have hoedowns, and one day when the surface is ready for our promised land, right, to settler colonize it again, because it's gonna be so great. We bring exactly the same racist capitalist colonial systems that we brought to the to Turtle Island, killed 100 million people, slaughtered the buffalo, and then brought global suffering through 500 as a process of 500 years of colonialism and capitalism, and used up all the oil, burned the climate, caused water shortages, category 7 pyronados, wildfires everywhere, but when we come back to the surface after all the damage we've caused, start a nuclear war for the banal and venalities and selfishness of billionaires who couldn't stand to see a multipolar world with socialist and Asian countries and African countries leading it, and global South countries living as equals, right? But when Americans come back out, we're gonna plant some corn, and we're gonna say Thanksgiving dinner, and we're gonna do some honky hoedowns, and we're gonna we're gonna set up. But well, I guess my point is that like that's one difference between Fallout and Silo, right? Which is like Fallout's like, well, this culture you got under the ground is kind of cheesy. I mean, there's not a lot of spice in it. The food kind of it's like, it's it's kind of silly in the way that Vault dwellers are. It's naive in the way that Western, first world privileged people are, and not really understanding and kind of not really getting how a lot of the situations that they cause, impact the rest of the world, and also, just living in a naive little bubble. It's very like suburban American life, suburban Western life, especially American life in the mid 20th century. It was written by a queer gay guy in San Francisco. And the second Fallout is full of like, Chinese advanced civilization possibly going to overtake the collapsed world nuking West. So that's in Fallout 2, by the way. Where the president of the United States blows the president of the United States is going to commit a second global genocide to cleanse the world again from a giant oil tanker backed by the remnants of the Pentagon and DC and the U.S. government and the military. They're going to come out and like kill every single person on the planet and replace them with enslaved clones of themselves or something. It's like anyway, okay, this is not a Fallout, but I mean it's hard to not make the comparisons, but I guess my point is that like if the surface is very toxic or is not a good place to live, then people should be able to go and check it out, or there should be like if people could all go and see, oh my goodness, like that's really bad, right? But it's obvious that people are being stopped from leaving their vault because there is a lie is being perpetuated, right? If the service was actually as bad as it was, or if the state of the world is that way, then people should be allowed to like learn that, right? But I think even I can't remember all the details exactly, because even in the vault, right? Even the vault, each vault's different. The vaults also are created by ultra rich, absolutely terrible Western imperial capitalists that just wanted to they gave one vault like all broken water chips and everybody died shortly after. They gave one vault like all kind of various problems. They like irradiate entire vaults. They caused like mass tortured vaults. They turned one vault into just like science experiments. Dumped radiation and things, mutated people. Which is what colonial capitalist Western entities will do from their highest echelons. It's like and there is control. People they're trying to control people for sure. But they're not. People aren't like locked in. Like the story of Fallout isn't like I'm locked into Vault, Vault 36 or Vault 70. You're not like locked into. What is the Fallout one? Vault 32. Shoot, you're not like locked into the vault. When the water, like when the vault dweller puts on his blue and yellow jumpsuit and gets out and walks out into the radiated desert with the rad scorpions and the giant geckos, and the cons. It's always got to be cons, doesn't it? The raider gangs. You can see like, wow, this world is not that good, right? He's got to shoot. You got to level up. You got to up your perception and your agility so that you can shoot some cave rats. He's like, man, grinding in RPGs for experience points is rough. And so when he leaves the vault, it's not like they were lying and the world outside is totally hunky dory and fine, and everyone's being kept in the vault. And the vault is actually like underground in Washington D.C. Like Truman Show, but worse, where people like have to live this terrible way. And people are being killed, people are being poisoned, terrible things are happening to these people, right? They're being experimented on. And on the surface, it's like, just regular everyday. It's like 1999 life. I was gonna say regular everyday 2026. I mean, fuck, I'm getting me in that silo, man. Get me in that vault. This world is full of freaking hurricanes and fire tornadoes, and you eat the food and there's like metal, cholera, and cyclosporiasis in it. Get me in that vault. At least they have apples that don't have, freaking typhus. I think they have. I think they don't have RFK in charge of, and they have like more than zero funding for public health in that silo. Sounds like. I mean, if the silo had RFK in charge of the apple orchard food safety, everyone would have died 200 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So like, get me in that silo. I take it back. Everyone, let's all go. Let's jump inside that fucking silo. We got to get in that vault, man. But I mean, saying so it's like, but like people are well, it's like if it's really bad on the surface, people should be given the option. Okay, well, if it's so bad, let's take a look, and if you want to stay in the silo and help make sure that we are able to perpetuate the species, then we'll stay down there. But if the surface is if the surface isn't that bad, then let people go on the surface, right? But so my point is, so Fallout, right? The Vault Dweller leaves to find the water chip, discovers all kind of things, and it goes on this adventure, and then comes back, the events of Fallout, not necessarily everything works out depending on the pathway you take, but like he's allowed to go out and come back, and there is a nuclear war has caused a nuclear devastation and a nuclear apocalypse to the surface, and then it's like, oh well, yeah, that's why we live in this vault, because the surface is not doing great, right? And so when he comes back and he's like, here, I found the water chip. It took me a long time. It took a lot. A lot of journeys. There's a lot of I had to find a mega power fist and a super sledge, and man, that was rough. But and then you come back with a water chip. So whereas in the silo, anyone who leaves is cannot come back, and they all die. But the way they die is like, are they dying because the surface is deadly? But then as time goes on, it's like something is not right, because like how and where and exactly why they're dying. Like people can see people leaving the silo, walking out, and then falling over dead before they get past the tree. And so people are like, oh, well, if you go outside, it's terrible, because oh my God, look at these people dying, right? But then later on you find out, okay, well, the reason they're saying is because once you leave, the air outside will kill you, right? But then later on you find out people have left, and somebody even comes back, right? And the person that comes back has to have the memory wipe. So anyway, long story short is, I'm not saying that the silo is set in the present, or even like in a normal world, or a world where the surface level is doing reasonably well, right? 200 years from now, but like whatever is happening, there's a whole tons of information that's constantly being covered up. So it is a controlled situation in that sense. Okay. Anyway, I spent so much time on that. I was just going on my Fallout trip. But anyways, okay. So coming back to this, how dystopian future manipulates the present and the memory holes. So I think that the so like the burying of information and how that causes people to obviously there's a lot to be said about telling half truths and lies in history books, in obviously in media reports and news stories is a major way that you can control societies, right? As William Casey, CIA director, once said, we'll know when the CIA's disinformation campaign is complete, when everything the American public believes is false. But not just that, like just the way that stories about what a politician has done, what a government has done, get covered up, what gets shown in corporate media versus what doesn't. All right, like even now, like we're going through the after effects of Hurricane Lala here in Hawaii. That's why there was no video last week, no YouTube video last week, no YouTube stream. I was gonna do it, and the power went out. And the corporate media, right, is all about greasing the celebrating and applause for U.S. government, NGOs, nonprofits, corporate, this politician, that politician, the brown faces in high places, but it's all corruption and it's all grift and it's all, they've done basically almost nothing or as little as possible for the victims and the people, residents of Hawaii. And it's all like Hawaiian community members, Lahui, Aina Mamona, people that we know, they're like anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, just local community members, Native Hawaiian-led organizations, sovereignty organizations, the actual linemen, the working class people of the electric company that restored the power lines, the electric executives making millions while people are in the dark, increasing prices so they can increase their profits while people are in the dark. I talked about this a lot. I don't really want to cover it because I spent like several hours on Wednesday, but so the way that the disaster is being remembered is completely skewed, or the way that the media, the memory, and the story, the narrative that the corporate media is giving about disasters in general and Hurricane Lala specifically, right? Which is owned by capitalist corporate entities, the ultra rich and the powerful and the most disgusting people in the world, is number A, completely false and full of lies, and B, it talks about how amazing the U.S. military, the National Guard, the United States government, illegal colonial occupation of Hawaii, which it is, how well it's done and how great this senator and that governor and what a great job they've done. They haven't really done this because of Hurricane Katrina, actual ice, both in California and in Minnesota. The community members are the ones who did all the protection and the actual action to minimize the harm and the kidnapping that the ice attacks caused. And then the government officials like Newsom and Democrats in Minnesota taking all the credit for it without doing anything. I mean, it's just the same pattern everywhere. So they're constructing a story, right? The Democratic Party is here to save you from the criminal Donald Trump, and that is the future that we will move into when you vote for us in the next election, right? So they're memory holding the actual, regular everyday people on the ground of various organizations, just regular people, left organizations, anti-fascist organizations, right? And the Republicans, Marco Rubio, are helping, and Trump's administration are helping construct the Democrats' narrative, right? Which is, yes, and it's anti-fascist and anti-capitalist that are destroying us all, being sponsored by Cuban masterminds, as if Cuba is this fucking global dominating power, a tiny little island that the U.S. is strangling to death, committing war crimes as babies and elderly, die because of lack of medical support because they're being blacked out by U.S. blockades. And like literally food and things being denied to enter the country. Luckily, they have China and other countries like that to help them out. But socialist, non-Western countries to come help them out, giving them 5,000 solar systems and just helping them get back on their feet, and donations of food and other infrastructural materials, and Russia as well. So the U.S. trying to strangle them at the same time. But this narrative that's like this is what's happening, right? It's these terrible the police still kill and kidnap more people than ICE, even as we speak. Obama still deported more than Trump. They don't actually want to deport that many people because they're losing the workforce, right? The U.S. doesn't have any basic workforce to keep its what remains of its agriculture and industry going. And so they can't even really afford to keep running on that the narrative. But the Republicans and the Democrats of a capitalist, white supremacist, plutocratic empire that is dying, needs to tell this story to its own populations, right? My point about memory holding, right, is memory holding the actual action of various organizations on the ground, and then projecting the false narrative, right? Like the AI controller that's telling the head of IT and the mayor to tell a particular story, right? In the silo, it's constructing a narrative. It's erasing the past. It's erasing the relics. It's like, oh, what happened to Silver Spook and Silver Spook's friends, the Emma and Namahini Koe that actually went out and got food, and that's what Holly sharing links, I'm sure. Lots of various organizations, right? They're not being just talked about on corporate media. They're not being talked about on the news. They're not being talked about by the Democratic Party. They're not being talked about by any mayor or senators of the Democratic Party, or obviously the Republicans, not even active in Hawaii because they have a hard time getting it going, right? Like the receipts, like how there's actual physical receipts, right, of all the water bottles, all the lights, all the food that was purchased, helicopter. This is like this Hawaiian-led anti-capitalist, anti-colonial, left organization, Nawa Inikoi, chartered 2 helicopters and flew food and resources into south side of Hawaii Island, Ka'u, that is literally cut off. They have like no roads in or out. They're like stranded there. They're like suffering over there. National Guard was standing there going, one of the organization went and said, okay, there's all these National Guard people and like, have you brought any materials for these people? Have you brought food? Have you brought like water? And the National Guard was like, nope. It's like, are you going to do anything? Are you planning to do anything for the people here? United States National Guard? Nope. What are you doing here? Well, we're taking pictures and we're setting up comms. So you're going to communicate to who? To Mark Zuckerberg? You're going to communicate to who? To Elon Musk? You're going to communicate to who? Oprah? Trillionaires? Billionaires? All the land that they can buy up after the disaster, just like you do in Louisiana, in hurricanes and disasters all around the world, in the United States and elsewhere? Is that what you do? I mean, that's not what she asked, but I mean, so the U.S. and the Democratic Party are there to facilitate disaster capitalism, stealing land, taking credit for things that actual left organizations, actual socialist, left, anti-capitalists, all kind of community organizations, environmental organizations, just like people at Stop ICE, just like people that are organizing against capitalism in the United States, against the oligarchy in the United States, on the ground, union members, just working class people, just the actual electric linemen that are fixing the lines as people are in the dark for 4 days. My family's been in the dark. They were in the dark for 5, 6, 7 days. They were actually in the dark for 2 weeks. And it's always poor and brown and Hawaiian and working class areas. They black out. They leave all the hotels on. The rich areas are always on. Anyway, I went off on that a lot on Wednesday, but I got to bring it up a little bit. But that's part of the memory holding, right? So the relic is, remember that time this is the Nawahine Ko'e shirt that they brought in, when they brought in the free clothing. Oh, I remember now, right? After all the corporate media and Western news and Western fake history books and the two-party duopoly brainwashing, I remember now. Remember that time when they brought it in? Yeah, I thought the Democratic Party and the United States military and United States government and Western capitalist entities and the fake nonprofits as a for-profit tax-deductible money laundering write-off for Bill and Melinda Gates or Bill and Hillary Clinton. I thought it was all them that did it. I thought it was FEMA and Red Cross that didn't bring anything either, or bring as little as possible and take beds brought for elderly that are sleeping out in the rain and the cold, or like just sleeping on hard surfaces, right? And then taking beds donated by well-meaning people and selling the beds back to Walmart or to the store, and then pocketing the money for the rich that they work for. That's literally what FEMA and Red Cross have done. This is like umpteenth time already. Obviously that's very. I'm very upset about those things because, but I bring up, it's on my mind right now because there's another storm coming right now. As we speak, there's a storm coming. This stream could go off. Like, the stream might turn off because the United States neglects its infrastructure, neglects working class and poor people, and especially neglects indigenous people like us, Native Hawaiians, and people of color. And it doesn't keep our power on. It lets it go off for days, weeks, basically inexplicably. I drove by it and I saw one down power line. 4 days after this. It wasn't even a hurricane when it hit. It was a tropical storm, and they left it off for 4 days. Hotels never went off. The rich never went off. Oprah, Jeff Bezos, his resorts, they never went off. Waikiki never went off. All the people that actually work in Hawaii, our power went off, stayed off. Why? And then they keep dragging their feet. Partially it's just to harm the communities that are not they're not the stakeholders of the United States, all parties, which is the rich, the capitalist class, the oligarchic class, empire, and the various chaotic interests of it. Anyway, so all that's memory hold, right? All that's stowed away. All that is sequestered, right? Or they try to sequester it. My job is to unearth it. My job is to surface the truth. Like so many. I'm not the only person. There's many people that are trying to do this all the time. It's a constant war of remembrance versus amnesia, empire, capitalist, colonialist, amnesia, and the resistance, indigenous, global, socialist, anti-capitalist, or just like normal human civilizational types of various kinds across the planet. Constant need to have informational resistance to remember what has happened, no matter how, because there is perpetual onslaught of neural disintegration. I mean, Gen AI is just the latest tactic to obfuscate and obliterate memory, right? Because an illiterate society that outsources everything up to C-spot run to AI, a society that cannot even read is a society that's not even literate, doesn't even have the possibility of becoming educated in a significant way, especially in the 21st century, which would make them easy to control, right? So in one sense, a global Gen AI lobotomized 8 billion person Earth, right? With just a handful of the rich with actual knowledge. This is the way they design their schools, from Waldorf and the expensive $20,000 a year schools. Those schools have very little tech. But all the other schools, they have as much tech as possible in them for the common, right? There's very little COVID exposure in a rapid antigen test filled a COVID premium vaccines, premium Paxlovid, premium treatment, $450,000 expensive wind tunnel, anti-aerosolized pathogen barriers, invisible ones, UV light. They have all these expensive ways to keep their bodies and their brains, right? Because COVID is all body damaging, brain, neurological, total organ, and HIV, AIDS, but it's COVID, AIDS causing disease. They're not getting it, but everyone else is, right? Everyone else is using. They want everyone else. Not everyone else is using. They want everyone else to use Gen AI and wreck their minds, so that they can, right, have easier to manipulate populations like the populations of the silo, who have almost no memory. And they have just enough of the exact kinds of memories that are specifically placed by a power that people can't even touch, just as Americans, Europeans, Westerners have the exact memories, right, liberal or conservative flavored. Both of them are controlled and designed for each of them to remember, right, about who won World War II, right? The lie that it was the West and America, that was communist and it was socialist and it was Russia and China in particular. And you're going to get massive pushback if you even bring that up. People freak out because it destroys their narrative of who they are. The lie that, the colonialism never happened or was good for people, right? Or we apologized enough for it and now it's over, depending on if you're conservative or liberal, which is no, it's ongoing. What's happening in Palestine is just a continuation. What's happening in Sudan, Congo, Africa, the proxy wars, failing proxy wars, of course, on China, are a continuation of an opium war. That was a century of humiliation, right? And one difference is China doesn't memory hole, right? That's the one way they allow people to see this is our past, this is what's happened, this is who America is, this is who we are, and this is who America is. Yeah, we have a communist party of China. We have socialism with Chinese characteristics. If you like this situation, look, we have very cheap. Everyone has food. Everyone has housing. We have world-class transportation, quantum, 5G, 6G. Nobody wants for anything. Go look on Xiaohongshu. If you don't believe that, we are world leading in software, hardware, solar panels, renewable energy, and over there's America. And if you want to go to America, look at how they're doing. Running out of food, 100 million food insecure running out of water, running out of energy because they're starting imperialist global wars. Donald Trump said, I'm going to solve the monetary crisis by starting wars. So literally admitting that perpetual genocide, death, destruction, starvation, war, sanctions, and colonialism is how empire and the West and capitalism have operated and have always operated. He just kind of said the quiet part out loud. The West, the United States, but even Britain and France before him, could never operate without mass, systemic, catastrophic violence and destruction of basically everything, because the system relies on vacuuming in all those suffering from the global South, the resources and their populations into the global North. And so countries that and systems that, right, that they don't do memory holes, right, where they have to wipe all the information because they're not, if you're not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about. So that's why socialist countries don't have anything to worry about, they can say our systems are different. These are the differences. The capitalist system and the Western system, in the Cold War, that's why they brought Ayn Rand over, right, as the premium anti-communist who had a high-quality education from the East to write the Screen Motion Pictures Guide for the Preservation of American Values, way to, right, the vitamin D plus of the planet from the end of World War II to the present has been Hollywood to a large extent, and affiliated print, the British print, the American TV and movie, right, and the Western constructed education system, because all textbooks, almost all planetary textbooks, are written and constructed. The culture industry and the education industry are constructed by the West. That is the vitamin D plus for the Earth. Those are the colonial brainworms that say Iran telling themselves, maybe we don't need to hit the American soil because we need to follow international law, even though they never do. They have been, and they keep blowing up innocent people, and committing committing wars of aggression, starting wars with countries that they weren't previously in, and so maybe, but we should follow the law maybe and not hit other countries. Maybe we shouldn't take control of Strait of Hormuz, even though they are embargoing Cuba. They're trying to control all waterways. They're talking about shutting down Malacca to try to choke off China. But the colonial brainworms inside Iran, even everywhere, but even inside Iran, because is that you have to the West can steal, they can charge money at ports, they can do all these things, right, and they can, but we have to follow rules that they don't even follow. I'm not saying that they're Iran's stealing, but it's just kind of even just like charging at the Strait of Hormuz. They could have always done that. Right, but it's partially it was the brainwashing that a global brainwashing through textbooks, through college, through Western film, right, which they watch. Even Ayatollah Khamenei is like, I read Western books too. That's why like Les Miserables better than the others. But even still, when you there is asymmetry to all of history, right? That gives certain countries certain skin color, certain types of people, certain systems, right? This ridiculous privilege, right, to be able to steal $450 trillion of resources from Africa, Asia, Latin America, and from certain kinds of people, certain kinds of labor, certain kinds of gender, certain kinds of people from certain regions that just count for less, right? But all of that is part of the propaganda and that is part of the memory holding, right? Or only focusing on, memory holding all of colonialism, memory holding the, what happened in Congo, but only front loading into the memory the story of Auschwitz and the Holocaust. I mean, not that those didn't happen or that those are not terrible, right? But then using the memory of those terrible events in the Holocaust against white populations to do another Holocaust, right? By weaponizing the suffering. To continue to do genocide, destruction, and war crimes in all of West Asia through the settler colonial apartheid state, an unsinkable aircraft carrier. Well, it seems like the unsinkable aircraft carrier and the empire itself are both sinking. But you know what I'm saying? Like they have and they continue to commit war crimes, blow up Lebanon, blow up innocent, starved little children in Gaza, obviously. But it's not just the direct bombing and suffering. It's the global capital system is immiseration of billions. The global colonial system and the forceful underdevelopment of Africa, Asia, and Latin America is the forceful immiseration of billions and the death and starvation of billions. Um, and all of that is memory hold, right? All of that is shut. I mean, it is surfaced by indigenous people, left people and groups everywhere around the world, in countries in the global south, and minorities and of various kinds at various times. But it is also perpetually being trying to be torn up and put back in the memories are constantly being confiscated by the head of IT from DC and Wall Street at all times, as much as possible. Every time you open up a corporate newspaper, every time you look at any Western political party or spokesperson or politician's speeches, it's like perpetually, even just the way the narratives are constructed, right? It's just constantly being erased. And so and even dystopian fiction itself, right? Like even George Orwell, right, who wrote 1984 about the dystopian cautionary tale about what could happen, which was, as I like to say, it was a story. 1984 is actually a story about Britain, right, but projecting it as some kind of we could one day turn into this kind of a society where information is hidden and there's unjust seizures and policing and surveillance, and like Britain has cameras everywhere. The so-called free world has cameras everywhere. It's had it for a long time. It is the number one country per capita by multiples. It's the number one country of literally arresting people based upon words they have said, right? So talking about like freedom of thought, right? Authoritarian regimes controlling people's thought, the doublespeak, manufacturing truth. That Britain has literally arrested more people, even than America, than any other country, for just saying, I think socialism maybe isn't the worst thing. Cops will come to your house in London and put you in jail. Just saying, perhaps we should stop committing genocide in Gaza. And they'll come to your house for saying it on Twitter or on Instagram or on Facebook. Even just like messaging someone on Signal, they can get it. The privacy of these things is all suspect in the West. If you're operating on Western tech, it's full of holes, and not to make memory holes. And so I guess my point is that, and also Orwell himself, right? Shortly before he died, he prepared a list of notable writers and other people he considered to be unsuitable as possible writers for anti-communist propaganda. For the anti-communist propaganda activities and the information research department. So Orwell literally worked for empire and capitalism as part of his part of his life. And the dystopias, right? Dystopian fiction is often projecting what Western colonial capitalist and neo-colonial countries are, right? Onto countries that are doing a far better job, that are often led by some kind of socialism, a communist party, or are just not going along with Western imperial capitalist dictates like Iran, which is always called authoritarian, no human rights, no democracy, no freedom of speech. China is constantly being called the most authoritarian. The British, all Western press, China the most authoritarian, most despotic, most totalitarian regime in the world. When they're the countries that are actually locking people up just for saying. No, the thing is, if you are inciting people to actual violence and it's really terrible, you're propagating fascism, maybe those people need to be dealt with, right? But the people in Britain are being locked up. People in Germany are being locked up. People in America and Canada are being locked up for trying to literally stop holocausts, right? Whereas in China, if you try to start holocausts, if you try to start a genocide, right? If you make up lies, for example, in ETIM, committing fascist, just rampant ethnic hate crimes, chopping people's heads off, driving over crowds of people in the streets. That's what they were doing. Backed by the United States military operations in East Afghanistan, pushing, along with the World Uyghur Congress or Bia Kadir and Adrian Zenz, and Western liberal and conservative media in cahoots with the U.S. empire to funnel the East Turkestan Islamic movement extremists like Al-Jolani, right? The so-called rebranded Al-Qaeda, literal former Al-Qaeda head chopper extremist, killed people based upon religious beliefs and whether women's head coverings were being worn properly, literally beheading women, right? Accepted by liberal and conservative media alike. in Germany, in Britain, in France, in the United States, in Canada. Al Jilani on CNN, right, giving a puff piece with rainbows, right? And that's more memory holding. And then and to deal with this actual extremism, they had to just, please, you need to stop. They had to kind of alleviate poverty, as opposed to the West, which creates poverty by giving billionaires and trillionaires that control all Western organizations and governments all the resources to do and extract more from the working classes and the poor of the world and the masses of the world. And in China, they alleviated poverty in that decreased the total level of extremism in the Xinjiang region, where there were hundreds of people that had died from these extremist attacks, funneled and funded and backed by the United States, as an attempt to balkanize and break up. It caused quagmires for China and Russia and Iran simultaneously in Central Asia, as part of a grand chessboard game and a Western imperial and neocon set of so-called chessboard moves that, unfortunately, they're not that good at playing their own imperialist chess. So now they're losing, and Trump is crying, "I'm gonna send my broken aircraft carrier to enforce world dollar hegemony." Anyway. Donald Trump is great, though, because he's so incompetent. He's going to break the empire faster than liberals will. They're also incompetent, but Donald Trump is a bit more incompetent, which is great for the world to be liberated from this terrible Western imperial capitalist disease and mental illness. Speaking of mental problems, it's a mental illness of a colonialism that is installed by these news media organizations, education Western textbooks, education organizations, cultural products, including movies and TV shows. Unfortunately, sometimes I'm not gonna, there's other ones that are worse than this one. But all Western culture, music, anyway, these brainworms can be installed into you, and it's part of the erasure of your memory. So coming back to the dystopian fiction though. So this idea, though, of the surface being unlivable, uninhabitable, terrible apocalypse is part of what keeps people underground. So in the same way that, like, oh, we're all doomed, we're all going to die from climate apocalypse, so let's all just give up and there's nothing to be done, it freezes and immobilizes people, right? Like I was talking about the Steve Zahn character that doesn't want to leave. He doesn't want to move. He doesn't want to do anything. When they need to be working to if they want to save who is currently alive, they need to be moving forward with this plan to stop there's a poisonous pipe that could kill everyone in a silo, and they're trying to cap it off. They're trying to stop the current living people's demise, right? And so, but somebody is immobilized, right? Kind of out of this one's out of depression and grief, right? But like, there's also like the people in general are immobilized from leaving. Right, and people are forced back. Right, people out of fear when they see someone die. Right, when they leave the silo and they fall over dead, they're not told exactly what the person leaving died of. Right, but the fear, right, of like, oh my God, it's disaster out there, is what keeps the people controlled. That's part of what keeps them controlled. Right, there's stories about who they are and what they're doing and the rules of the silo. And there's a handbook, right? They all have to read, and we're part of the silo. We don't know how long it's been here. All we know is the outside is unlivable and we have to keep living and doing our part here. Right. But part of it is the fear of, if you do leave, you will die. Right. And so part of so dystopian futures though, right, where it's like, oh, well, we can't listen to socialism. We can't listen to leftists. We can't listen to anti-capitalists, anti-colonialists because, well, hey, Marco Rubio said so, and he's some kind of genius that works for an orange clown. So, that's not. The propaganda is very thin compared to the 20th century Cold War and McCarthyism and the Red Scare. So the imperial Western capitalists, the DC, they're really losing the knack for this nowadays. The CIA jukebox is malfunctioning. It's like, not even the songs coming out all out of tune nowadays. You got Marco Rubio over there. So you can't listen to the socialists because communists, because that's what they told Americans in the 20th century. And look, there's apple orchards, and there's one man could go to work in the American silo and work at your Ford car factory, or be a marketing person for a American refrigerator company or whatever, or General Electric, and you get one man could, white straight man, you could get a wife and 2 kids, and you can have bouncy castle. You got a little swing for your kids, and you get a Thunderbird, and you get a retirement with a company watch, and you get a good old Leave It a Beaver life. But just watch out with those communists though, because that as long as you stick to the program, it's so that it's like the apple orchard. You get apples without cyclosporiasis, giardia, cholera, and typhus. Keep your head down though, right? You get a place to live. You get some food. You get there's a doctor there. But keep your head down inside of this container. You go outside there's communism out there. It's gonna kill you. Communism killed 600 trillion people when central planning caused crop failures in Venezuela, Vietnam, Venezuela. It killed all these people. So if you look out there into other ideas, you bring in the poison, we'll all die. Right? And so dystopian future is dystopian futures that are made to describe what so-called the horseshoe theory of communism equating to fascism. This is when the Western imperial capitalist-backed fascists of Nazi Germany, Mussolini, and the fascist Japan failed to contain communism and the uprising of the global South as well. Africa fought against the communists as well. Communists fought fascists in Spain. It's even in Oppenheimer. That history was memory hold, and the liberal capitalists that had to reign after because they lost the mask-off conservative 1800 style colonial brutal, more direct brutal dominance because of the loss of capitalism and fascism against communism in World War II. They had to memory hold that past and say communism is actually the same as fascism, even though communists fought the fascists, and say communism is the same as fascist, this horseshoe theory, and capitalism is this third thing, and capitalism and democracy are over here the third thing, right? So we'll work for the social democrats, right? Because it's not the same as that evil Stalinism, right? We're this third thing over here, and we definitely. It's not like Churchill ever shook hands and ever had a good word to say about Hitler, which he absolutely did. It's not like Henry Ford, the American, ever had any collaboration with the Nazis. He made billions of dollars making planes, trucks, guns, bullets to kill innocent people under the Third Reich, and he actually sued the American government and won. It's not like we ever did any of that. It's not like 70% of the German government was literally Nazis installed by the United States afterwards. Right? It's not like the United States is rehabilitating Japan under Sanae Takaichi to be some kind of new Western imperial fascist fist against China. Quixotic and farcical, but that's what they're doing. Letting Japan undo their defense pact so that the West, right, operating from the core of the Western Hemisphere of DC, reaching around the planet to Russia and China, through the fists of Germany, Europe, and Japan and South Korea, try to punch into Russia and China and the communist resistance, or socialist and anti-imperialist resistance nowadays, or socialist multipolar world anti-imperial resistance. All that is perpetually memorable of the West, and so dystopian fiction is part of that. I would argue it's actually not really part. If dystopian fiction would actually limit the unjust abuses of plutocratic oligarchies of Britain, America, and the West, right? If dystopian fiction, it's kind of like if voting worked, they would make it illegal. If dystopian fiction actually improved the societies and limited the authoritarian overreach of authoritarian Western countries, they would also ban it. But dystopian fiction is put to the forefront. I'm not saying that all dystopian fiction is a psyop designed to contain every Westerner into a capitalist colonial and increasingly imploding capitalist colonial first world prison, of dying U.S. and European economies that are deindustrialized under 40 years of Thatcherite neoliberalism that no longer can extract trillions and trillions of stolen wealth and resources and gas and oil and lithium from Africa and Central and West Asia and manufacturing potential from East Asia and lithium and other resources from the Latin America. I'm not saying, and obviously stolen indigenous land, in Canada and the tar sands and stolen military baseline in Guam and Hawaii and Okinawa. I'm not saying that dystopian fiction is about maintaining that system per se by stopping people from researching what China is actually doing. Right? By saying, oh, well, in China, it's like Orwell. Remember when I read that book? Remember we all read Animal Farm and we all read Orwell, right? In our high school Camden class. Remember in Oxbridge when we read about, when we read Brave New World, and when we read 1984, and you see China is like that, and that's why we should not study it, because if you do study it, then you're never going to get a job in the British Parliament. You're never going to get a job as an American lawyer for Apple. If you ever bring that up, you're never going to get tenure at this university. If you ever bring that up, how are you going to get your bouncy castle? You go watch Retirement Gift, your Thunderbird, your 2.5 kids or your 1.6 kids, right? Or nowadays, how are you going to be a black trans woman with your queer non-binary partner piloting drones that are blowing up children in Palestine from an aircraft carrier, right? Also, how are you going to eat on the aircraft carrier nowadays? But maybe you're lucky and you're stationed in Vandenberg. You're stationed somewhere out. How are you going to get your cut of the empire? If you don't we all read the dystopian fiction that tells us what Russia and China and Iran are, right? Russia and China and Iran are, they are, what is it? The Oceania. They are the world of 1984. Russia and China and Iran, they are Brave New World. They are, they're Orwellian. They're, those are the cyberpunk dystopias. Like those are like, they're all run by bigger corporations and, the people are jumping out of fucking buildings in Foxconn, I think, China and Russia, everyone's like being killed, just like in that one dystopian video game I played. And don't you know, we don't have to study what's happening there, because we know, because I read so much dystopian fiction. I already know what Russia's like. I don't need to visit there. I read so much, I read so much, nightmare sci-fi. I watched so much sci-fi TV shows about how bad dystopias are. I already know what Iran's like, because I watch all these shows. I consume so much dystopian sci-fi, and that's how I know, right? And that's how we all know. And even if we think about going there and then talking about our experiences, visiting China and coming back, anyone who talks about going to get fired from our cushy ass jobs as upper middle class boomer and Gen Xers working at corporations, nonprofits, and government and military institutions in the West, in the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, and like puppet bullshit liberal colleges in Beijing, like Jacqueline, what's that guy's name? That guy, he's always on the circuit. So as part of the Western the people who paid the piper of Western Marxism, even you can't be a Western Marxist unless you pay the piper that pays you dollars through the trader class and the Jacobin that throws Boots what's his name, Chris Smalls, under the bus for actually trying to stop a genocide but being against empire and capitalism, and then backing the so-called socialist person with Nazi swastikas tattooed all over his body, because that would help save capitalism by. It's a weird thing. You're gonna pivot to the manly working class who also like shooting brown people in West Asia for empire, that say the word socialism sometimes. I know it's a weird. Graham Plattner was a weird pivot for them, but anyway. Okay. Anyways, I'm like way off of it. But long story short, I think that dystopian science fiction and dystopian futurism can be part of manipulating the present when it takes the everything alters your thought. But actually, I think that part of it is, this is not a point of silo, but this is just something I'm saying, which is that like sometimes, the belief that there's nothing to do about climate change, which is false, because there's something to do about climate change. It's being done. It's just not being done by the West. It's not being done by the United States, Western countries, Green, Democrat, or any of those other parties. They're basically all falling apart to the extent that they exist. There were always the green faces in high places, right? It was greenwashing a toxic empire that with the number one carbon polluter on the planet is the U.S. military that is at the forefront of everything Western, right? It's basically it's run by the military-industrial complex, which is the number one carbon emitter. So all Western green parties are just fig leaves on a toxic sludge emitting country. And now the fig leaves are just falling off, right? In the current administration, that's just saying we're not going to go into any renewables. We're not going to do anything. Anything renewable, because anything renewable empowers sovereignty. That's the reality. It's always been that way. And anything renewable is not going to be made by the U.S. doesn't even have the capability to even compete with China on solar panels, even if they wanted to, which they don't want to, because the sun shines everywhere, the wind blows everywhere, and it empowers countries and peoples and communities where they are to have more renewable energy. So that for that reason, not even because of the it's not really about the damage to the climate. It's about the sovereignty that Cuba is showing that it can have, that cannot be choked off by blockades, right? Like literally, if the world went solar, the United States would finally completely lose the ability to even try to control countries like Cuba. It would be the end of empire, and by extension, it would be the end of much of the capitalist system. So that the real reason why the West never really goes hard into climate change, or into dealing with climate change and investing and really seriously trying to build out green technology and allow green technology, solar, EVs, wind, is because of its anti-imperial characteristics, just because of the thermodynamics of sunlight and wind. That's actually, that's actually the major reason. It's kind of like the reason why gay marriage became legal in California and Hawaii and it was legalized is not because suddenly a global amoral plutocracy saw the light and just like, oh, we're sorry that we were mean to gay people. They could make more money with more weddings and more events and big expensive hotel stays if they allowed gay marriage. That was the calculation. Enough of that calculus pushed enough of the pay-to-play, totally corrupt Western plutocracy of DC, which is just the best government money can buy system. And so more money went to legalizing gay marriage. There was money that said gayness is wrong, but gayness is wrong doesn't make as much money as, gayness, the homophobia didn't make as much money as, well, let's let people get some gay married though. And then we got 10% more, right? 10% more weddings. And so that's where like liberalism will win out sometimes in that game. Now, when it comes to like pretending like you're not doing war crimes, it does cost money to try to pretend like America is moral when it's not, right? So the conservatives go, well, we don't care about pretending like we're moral, so we can fight these wars and we're not even going to try to clean anything up. We don't like pretend like doing food safety inspections is costly, so let's just throw them out, right? And that's part of the calculation. And we don't really care about our citizens if they live or die, right? And so them buying food that's toxic as our empire crumbles, we don't care if enough people get sick and they die, and suddenly there's a pushback and they want food safety. Well, then we'll take precautions, but for now it's cheaper to not do them, right? And so RFK doesn't make sense. I mean, they talk about Project 2025 and this, but the Democrats and Republicans are the same fucking party. They're on the same team, so that's their project, their collective project. One ratchets forward, the other one stops it from ratcheting back. Right, and so if you're the oligarchy, like you want to have a minimum. They discuss the billionaires discuss. Well, maybe we should leave some food safety in place. Well, what if like COVID-19? What if we only have what if just like we have all these COVID precautions, UV, just basically magic invisible bubbles, or just like these all these methods and ways to keep us from getting COVID. All of our Hollywood stars that have all these masking rules and they have extremely controlled illness limiting processes at all of our events and on their sets, because we all invest billions and millions into Hollywood movies, into ourselves, right? And we're not getting it. So just like we don't get this terrible destructive virus, but the common masses do because we don't care and it costs money to prevent them from getting it and we don't want to spend it. What if we eat healthy food that we fly in on our own because we can afford it? We'll fly in actually treated, regulated food for the billionaire class, and everyone else can just eat poison food because it costs money. It costs more money to get the metal out of the broccoli. It costs money to check everything for cyclosporiasis and all these other viruses and illnesses, and it costs money to do that. This place is falling apart and we don't care. We're here for the money. We're here for ourselves. We're selfish individualist billionaires, oligarchs. So let's just right. So from that perspective, from in the plutocracy two-party system. That's the process that they're going through, and it's just a test. Now, of course, if it's suddenly the blowback is too much, and they said, well, now we're losing money feeding people, disease-infected broccoli and lettuce and meat. Okay, well then roll it back. It just depends on, but let's give it a try. Let's just try like rolling. The West didn't have any food precautions. The West did bloodletting. If everyone uses Gen AI and gets COVID-19 another 6 times, like once a year on average, and then they get total massive brain damage and they can't even read properly, then it'll be, then maybe you can go back to bloodletting where people they can't, like nobody can even read a medical textbook if they wanted to, which itself is full of half-truths and disinformation, like black bodies feel less pain than white. But even if they wanted to try to read the textbook, so once we get to that level of human mind memory holding, then we can roll out a return to bloodletting and putting leeches on the body. Or if it's cheaper to slit people's wrists as a treatment for flu or mystery virus, then we'll do it. If we make more money, or if we maintain control, not really about money, but if we maintain control over the population using this method, then we'll pursue that. If that makes sense for us, the tiny minority of mostly cis white, straight, ultra rich, powerful, terrible people like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. And if it makes sense for us, then we'll do it. And if it doesn't, then we'll pivot. Then we'll put some food safety in place. Maybe it won't be very well funded. Does it make sense to have people liberals want people to read because liberals need people to read, because educated classes going into universities is the prime demographic of their voter base. But maybe we won't need liberals anymore. That's why the Democratic Party is like transmutating. Right? There's even talk about it would be very near field too, because there was a talk about the Democratic and Republican parties like fusing into one party, which literally happens in near field too. So that would be another thing I predicted that comes true. The Demo Republicans, and then there being like an even more far right party just appearing. Like the MAGA is kind of like that populist party that might, it's unfortunately falling apart. Or I should not unfortunately falling apart, but unfortunately for them, not doing too well, because Trump is extremely good at blowing up empire, his own country's empire and its system out of his incompetence. But there's no the oligarchy is not going to suddenly. I mean, of course, there is certain progress being made in certain places, like in the kind of sort of meeting some promises Zoran Mandani is doing, but at the same time, there's all these other there's many other cities and many other places that are still going through contradictions. They're not like free of this two corporate party duopoly, and so anyway. So, sorry, I'm like way off the topic. I'm just way out into the deep end. Long story short, how the dystopian future manipulates the present is that, and so that's one reason why in Near Future 2 I had less total dystopian future, because it can be a trap if it's if it's not specifically described as this is where we are, this is where we can be going, and also like this is not who we might become, this is who we are already. That's the point of Near Future 2, is to kind of like delicately, or sometimes not so delicately, push people to consider maybe like who we are is Neo-Feud in many ways already. We're not like going to dystopia. We're already at the dystopia. Now in 2020s, for younger people, for sure, that's more believable. But there's many people, especially liberals and privileged people, middle upper class people, who still believe, right, that this is not who we are. We are not. We're a country with a few flaws, and most of that's due to Donald Trump. They're not pre-existing problems. These were caused by. It was all good when Biden was in charge, or it was all good when Obama was in charge, or some kind of golden age, right? Now, of course, if you're an indigenous person, if you're Native American, if you're Native Hawaiian, if you're actually a poor person, a working class person, a global South person, if you're a trans person, for sure, especially nowadays. But many people would say, hey, like this country has always been about. It was founded on slavery and genocide, and killing 100 million 100 million people by killing their food sources like buffalo. It's founded on and has been perpetually existing in ongoing imperialist war, genocidal war. It was part of a colonial capitalist history before that. It is the number one. It has killed 38 plus million people just with sanctions alone in the last 50 years. It's killed millions and millions of people through direct warfare to maintain a global unjust system that's burning the planet and hurting everyone. And like it has like it wasn't good 4 years ago. It wasn't good under this administration or that administration. It was better masked at that time, and so but dystopian fiction. I guess my point there is part of the control of the mind, right? Is the amnesia that dystopian fiction causes. Not just all Western fiction, all Western nonfiction and fiction, all imperial capitalist society, or I should just all disinformed, unjust, structure-based society. Fiction and nonfiction is part of reconstructing memory, right? Right? Because when you project into a super dark, quote unquote, dark world, right? A terrible thing. It makes you feel better about yourself, right? It's kind of like having the boogeyman Donald Trump makes Democrats feel better about themselves. Like they didn't just do Holocaust Harris and Genocide Joe, and everyone watched 2 years of live stream babies being killed by the Democratic ruled country, Democratic Party ruled country. Right? So like the like it's like, oh my god, we could get so bad we could be ruled by Trump. Oh my god, it could get so bad we could be in like 1984. Oh my god, it could get so bad we could be in like, Neuromancer's dystopian world. Like what are we, a bunch of Asians? Look, there's geishas there's Asian people in my LA. Anti-Asian and xenophobia and Orientalism and fear of East Asia, right? Which is racist, right? Is part of cyberpunk. It's actually baked in. If you look, certainly at a lot of its history, which is just part of the Western psyche. What if we get replaced? Let's bring about the Plaza Accords and implode and create this vassal, and let's like tank the Japanese economy by blowing up Toshiba and kidnapping their executives, just like the U.S. Empire kidnapped the French executives at Alstom in the 2010s when they felt that like maybe they would lose their global unipolar hegemonic corporate power, right? And so and so I'm not saying that like William Gibson, when he wrote Neuromancer, was trying to just do that, right? But that like when you go back and read it, it's just part of what was floating around in the air. It's part of what was in liberal books, in the New York Times bestseller list, in the London's popular books and sale in all the bookstores, right? The print world, academia, and the just general print world, books, the book industry, print industry, has been part of empire. Like that is the head of IT has been London Publishing for centuries, right? In one sense, right? And then the United States, Hollywood, and then the tech and the open world empires of Call of Duty, right? And the silver screen, Star Spangled brainwashing of Donald Duck, symbolizing the U.S. Navy, or the Mickey Mouse ears everywhere, bringing somehow freedom and democracy, where it perpetuates control and unfreedom and suffering in a global imperial capitalist system, right? It's just a continuation of the print empire of the British and the French before them that maintained mind control and memory holding of the whole planet, or controlling the narratives and the minds of everyone. So in that sense, so the TV and the movie and the game and social media world, and then, Donald Trump's specific tweets and Donald Trump's specific Truth Social is just a continuation of this long, unjust structure and system. And so when you go, oh my God, Donald Trump showed up, we were so good before that, and then the actual left and the global South is like that. You got to stop smoking this. You got to stop smoking Western privileged Gen X and Boomer middle class or upper class white man produced dystopian fiction, because when you smoke that kind of dystopian fiction, you start thinking like you're the good guys in the world, or that like you are part of these interlocking systems that are good, functional, a positive force in the world, and you think it reinforces this is not who we are, right? I think that's actually the number one purpose. That was actually the Orwellian purpose, is to reinforce that this is not who we are. dystopian fiction maximizes the stormtroopers of Empire denial of their stormtrooperness. It maximizes the labor aristocracy's denial that they are the nobility. Dystopian fiction improves of that kind when it's read in that way, right? It improves the power of authoritarian regimes rather than degrade it, right? Because even if Donald Trump is gone, it would not stop the authoritarian nature of an oligarchic structure. The belief that once Donald Trump is gone, things will, or some Republican is gone, things will be righted. The belief that once Donald Trump is gone, there will be no kings in America. As if Elon Musk literally didn't self-declare as the techno king and CEO, and the United States government said, absolutely, sire. Absolutely, Your Majesty, which it did. And he is, when he pays his taxes for the Tesla Corporation, he is officially the techno king and CEO of the Tesla Corporation in his filings. So this idea that like once we move this, once we get rid of this particular apple, our orchard will be pure, right? Is part of what has always kept Empire moving forward, right? It's a story. It's like the story that it's a negative story, but it is, right? It's not empowering. It's not moving forward with something good, but it is part of the story that allows the West to continue to perpetuate itself. Right? The lie of Western democracy is what allows the non-democracy on a global scale to continue. It's what allows imperialism. That's what capitalism thrives on, the lie of American democracy and British and Western democracy. If it was to fall, right? If it was to fall, right? Not even in the eyes of the world, and also in the eyes of its own domestic population, that could be the implosion. It was a deal that was cut, right? It was part of the deal that was cut in certainly after World War II, right? But like it was part of like when the heads started to roll in the West, right? In France, right? Heads have never rolled in Britain, right? But they didn't. The revolution was not successful because in a long sense, because the France is still part of a colonial capitalist system. They're still trying to starve Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger of all their uranium and their gold. Of course, Russia and China are helping, and Iran are also helping the AES in Africa resist. But France is still a capitalist empire ruled by tyrants, not just Macron, right? But everybody around it. Not just Marine Le Pen. There's Macron, and then there's the so-called one of these fountains of so-called democracy is like they're not even having real elections. They've had like multiple completely failed, imploded elections, and they had oligarchs literally just selected when a left party. Basically, when the people chose a left party rather than the right wing party, the oligarchy just said no. Actually, we're gonna just like redecide the outcome, and it's back to Macron, the neoliberal, right? Because it's a joke, right? It's just they said no. Actually, look, France, Britain, America. There's no such thing as democracy. I mean, if you vote in it, there's a Princeton study that shows basically. There's almost 0%. It's basically marginal error, the impact that the masses have on what the government actually does in terms of policy. But anyway, so that's where like this dystopian fiction, I shouldn't say that it never has any purpose because obviously if you reading is good. Not saying that you shouldn't read. It kind of depends on like how it's read and in what context it's read. But I think it's important when people say, "Oh, that was so on the nose, that was so direct, that was so ham-fisted, that was so didactic." If you don't say exactly, or you have to say more clearly, it's always better to err on the side of say the thing you want to say in your fiction. I mean, maybe it's some personal taste, but I mean, in terms of your impact in the world, certainly in the disinformed Western world. That is the Death Star, full of stormtroopers thinking that they are the rebellion. If you say a thing through your fiction, through your art, through your work, and it isn't saying it direct enough, that is the bigger danger. Because people can just read it, right? Starship Troopers is read as, this is why signing up for the U.S. military is good. right? I mean, whatever Paul Verhoeven wanted to say, that's the way that so it's been found in bunkers all across in U.S. military bunkers in Iraq on the side inside aircraft carriers. It's it actually by some accounts boosted U.S. military recruitment. A movie that was supposed to be critiquing imperialism and this fascist and hyper militarism, it actually boosted. Right? And why did it do that? Because diseducated and disinformed populations that don't want to face who they are, because the reality is dealing with an actual authoritarian regime. It's not going to be as easy as and then we just rise up and we just follow some there's no some superhero plot. It's going to be much more difficult than that, right? And also, you are not the West has protagonism syndrome. They want to be the main character. They want to be the savior. They want to be the white savior. They want to be the Western savior of the global South, of Iran. But they're never going to be. They're going to barely be able to save themselves. They're just imploding. All right? China is basically saving what remains of the United States auto industry and is helping quietly to, in some places, rebuild some infrastructure, because the United States private equity firms and BlackRock and Blackstone, they don't care to, again, it makes more money to allow the West to disintegrate and just take the termite-eaten bits of General Electric, General Motors, and just lay off and cut pensions and just pocket a difference. Let electrical highway. That's why electrical companies are not properly rebuilding as fast as they should be, because it makes more money to not build highways than to build them. It makes more money to make broken, shoddy planes like the Boeing 737 than to make them properly. It makes more money to just buy a bunch, get a bunch of corporate buybacks, print money, give it to yourself, and do nothing. Do nothing in the real world. Let it rot. So, anyway. So what does that mean? So that's why, and the material conditions and the state, the cultural and the culture, the life ways of Western people is not one of resistance. Like we have to learn slowly and over time. It's a decaying privileged class of the world, the West. Even as it decays to a worse and worse state, it's disproportionately being shouldered by Gen Z and Alpha, millennials, and then especially Gen Z and Alpha now. But it's not organized, it's not strong enough to be able to be, and it's not at the level of oppression that African and Asian and Central West Asian and African and Latin American countries have gone through. So those are the protagonists. They're way more organized. Like China is just. They have a communist party. They've overthrown their landlords and their oligarchic class. From the commanding heights, the people's government controls their country and their economy. So they and other countries that are joining with them in the multipolar world are in the lead. And they are leading. They're leading in solving climate change. They're leading in dealing with these needless global imperialist wars. They're dealing with building alternative ways to develop and to better your people's needs than the Western IMF debt traps and these colonial and subordinate imperial system that's terrible for everyone in the world, right? It's the West is not the West, it hasn't got off the couch to start walking, and it wants to run marathons in terms of leading the world to liberation, right? And so it doesn't. So that's why Neophyte 2, it does have work to do, but it's it shows that there's a wider world outside of the prison of this rotting, formerly first class, now decaying prison of the United States, of Western so-called democratic capitalist countries. And their job is to try to even stop their own countries from decaying by making systemic change inside their own countries. After failure after failure after failure after failure to finally make internal systemic change, after centuries, if not millennia, to have a real revolution and real systemic change to put the people, the masses, in Hawaiian we call the maka'ainana, the people in control of their governments, their businesses, their economic and social and political structures, right? And that's really should be the goal, not going out and trying to save the whole planet, which they can't do. Anyway, okay, I feel like I've gone off in so many directions at once. I'm gonna have to probably just call it a day. But long story short, I do think Silo, because I know I went off on a lot of tangents. Silo is a good show. Do check it out. It has a lot to say about memory. It does have a lot to say about the how narratives are constructed, how people are controlled by forgetting, mass forgetting, and I do think it's well acted, it's well directed. Some of it is a little bit. It does take a little bit of time in the first few episodes, but it picks up after that. If you haven't seen any of it, I do recommend you check it out. And if you'd like to help us out as a Silver Spook Cooperative, you can give us a direct donation through ko-fi.com/silverspook. You can also help us out at patreon.com/neofeud to give us ongoing support. And you can also, if you want to help us out even more and you like video games, you can also pick up Neofeud 2. Wow, it's getting super hot and humid right now. I think the humidity is like racking my brain right now. Also, I got bad sleep for a bunch of nights in a row. So my brain is not in the absolute best state just due to the lack of sleep. I blame partially the power outage. I had to like sit in the car in a weird position for a long time, and then sleeping in different positions and locations. Just I'm not a young whippersnapper. So if you'd like to if you like to play games or you know anyone who does, Neofeud 2 is a cyberpunk sci-fi adventure of epic scope. A galactic empire enriches CEO kings, yet leaves Les Miserables hungry. An ex-Robo Marine turned dancer, goth alien hacktivist, and a billion-year-old mentor struggle to free E-Mines, organize resistance, and overturn the chessboard. The cosmic Neo-Feudal chessboard for good. Neofeud 2 is a game that you can grab on Steam, and Neofeud 1 is also on Steam as well. You can also grab other games on Steam and itch.io for Windows and Mac. On itch, you can grab Neofeud and the sequel on Windows, Mac, and Linux. Partially, I'm like talking faster and faster. I'm not sure why. Decolonators and Indigestar and several other games are also available on itch.io if you would like to pick those up. And there's also short story collections like Neofeud and The Terminus Machina 1 and Woman is a Book by Holly. That's critiquing right-wing Christian culture. And you can also follow at Silver Spook on various platforms like Instagram and Facebook and Blue Sky and Mastodon and all over the place at look for Silver Spook. And then also you can follow Holly at Allergic to Blue. Let's see if I can find that. Holly is, of course, our content moderator, always sharing important links. There's a lot of educational, organizational, and domestic work here at the Silver Spook Cooperative. So thanks a lot to Holly as well. And thanks to our patrons for our ongoing support. Without your support, it's hard to keep doing this work. So thank you so much to all of our Patreon patrons. And yeah, until next time, keep mirror shades possible excellent to each other. And yeah, see you next time.